Picture this. You've been making fried rice for years and it always comes out soggy. These are 31 Japanese fried rice tricks that fix that. The grains clump. The bottom goes gummy. The whole thing tastes like brown rice with an egg in it, and Japanese home cooks have been fixing all of it for generations. Number 4 is the one that'll make you angry. Nobody told you sooner. Let's get into it. Number 31. Rinse your rice until the water runs clear, and half your clumping problem is solved before the burner is on. One quick pass under the tap is why grains fuse into paste. Cover the raw rice in cold water, swirl, pour off the cloudy water, and repeat 4 or 5 times. That cloudiness is loose starch from milling, and it gelatinizes into glue in hot water. This is how Japanese home cooks get grains that stay separate. A few of these I learned from my grandma Yuki, who never explained a single one of them. Number 30, cook the rice with about 10% less water, and it will fry instead of smear. Standard ratio rice is perfect for chopsticks and wrong for a hot pan because it holds all the water it can. Use 1 1/3 cups of water per cup of rice instead of 1 1/2. Starch granules swell in proportion to the water available, so restricting it leaves them firmer and drier inside. This is how Japanese restaurants get rice that hits the pan ready to brown. Number 29, put 1 teaspoon of oil in the rice cooker and the grains come out already refusing to stick. Everybody adds oil in the pan at the end when the sticking has already happened. Stir 1 teaspoon of neutral oil into the water before the lid goes down, per 2 cups of raw rice. During cooking, amylose molecules wrap around fat molecules to form complexes that occupy the sticky sites on every grain. This is how professional kitchens get separation from the very first step. Number 28, chill the cooked rice uncovered overnight, and you have the best fried rice base there is. Warm rice from the cooker is soft, wet, and cannot survive a hot pan. Spread it in a shallow container an inch deep, leave it uncovered, and give it 1 full night in the refrigerator. The gelatinized starch recrystallizes overnight, a process called retrogradation, firming every grain, while the open surface lets moisture evaporate instead of condensing back. This is how Japanese home cooks have used yesterday's rice for generations. And since we are talking about the rice, here is how to fix it when you did not plan ahead. Number 27, spread hot rice on a sheet pan and fan it, because you do not actually need fresh rice. This is the myth that stops people making fried rice on a weeknight. Dump the fresh rice onto a sheet pan, break it into a thin layer, and fan it with cardboard for 5 minutes. Evaporation cools, so escaping steam carries heat away and takes the surface water that would otherwise steam your pan. This is how restaurant kitchens turn fresh rice around during service. Number 26, break the clumps with wet hands and every grain gets its own contact with the pan. Cold rice comes out as one solid brick, and breaking it up in the pan smashes half of it. Run your palms under cold water, shake them off, and work the rice apart until you see loose grains. A film of water on your skin stops the starch adhering, and separated grains touch hot metal directly instead of insulating one another. This is how Japanese cooks handle rice with hands before it meets heat. Number 25, let the cold rice sit out for 20 minutes and your pan will stay hot enough to work. This is the invisible mistake because the pan is smoking and the rice still turns damp when it lands. Take the rice out first, then prep everything else while it sits. Refrigerator cold rice pulls enormous stored heat out of the pan, and once the surface drops below the point where water leaves faster than it arrives, you are steaming. This is how Japanese restaurants keep the pan from crashing on the first toss. Number 24, use a flat carbon steel skillet instead of a round wok, because that wok is lying to you. A round-bottomed wok on an American burner is a beautiful object doing nothing. Get a 12-inch flat-bottomed carbon steel pan and heat it over your largest burner. Conduction requires contact, and a round wok on a flat ring touches the flame at one small circle while the sloping sides sit cold. This is how Japanese home cooks work on ordinary stoves and why their results beat yours. Speaking of the pan, the next one is the oldest professional trick there is, and stay with me because number 11 changes the whole dish in 4 seconds. Number 23, hot pan, then cold oil, and food stops welding itself to your steel. Oil poured into a cold pan breaks down as it warms. Heat the dry pan on high until it wisps smoke. Then add 2 tablespoons of room temperature oil and swirl to the edges. Metal expands as it heats and its microscopic pits close. And cool oil flooding across at that moment gives you a release layer instead of bare steel grabbing at starch. This is how restaurants keep rice from bonding, and my grandma Yuki used to test the heat with her palm above the metal, which I called a waste of time. I have since apologized. Number 22, cut everything to the size of a grain of rice, and every bite carries the whole dish. Big chunks mean you are eating vegetables and rice separately, and they are still raw when the rice is done. Dice your onion, carrot, and char siu to 1/8 of an inch. The ratio of surface area to volume controls cooking speed, so small dice finishes in the same 3 minutes the rice needs while exposing far more surface for browning. This is how restaurants get every spoonful tasting complete. Number 21, salt the EGG instead of the rice, and the curds come out soft. Salt added later never gets inside the egg, and unsalted egg protein sets into rubbery squeaks. Whisk a 1/4 teaspoon of salt into your beaten eggs and let them sit while you finish prepping. Chloride ions get between the egg proteins and interfere with their ability to bond tightly as they coagulate, so the network stays looser and holds more water. This is how Japanese home cooks get tender egg over screaming heat. Number 20, coat the raw grains in beaten egg before they ever see the pan, and you get golden fried rice. In most home versions, the egg is scattered yellow debris, while the rice stays pale. Fold 1 beaten egg through 3 cups of cold rice until every grain looks evenly yellow. The lipoproteins and lecithin in the yolk film coat each grain, then set into a thin protein shell that keeps grains apart and browns. This is how restaurants produce that uniform gold color you cannot get by scrambling egg in at the end. Number 19, add a tablespoon of Japanese mayonnaise to the cold rice, and the fat distributes perfectly. Oil poured into a hot pan runs to the low spots, so some grains swim and others stay dry, which is how fried rice gets greasy and bland at once. Work 1 tablespoon of Kewpie through 3 cups of cold rice before it meets heat. Mayonnaise is a stable oil and water emulsion, so the fat is already in droplets small enough to coat every surface, which loose oil never does. This is how Japanese home cooks get even coating without grease. That handles the coating. Now the fats, and stay with me through the seasoning because number 7 is the one people argue about in the comments and are wrong about. Number 18, cook the EGG first, take it out, and put it back at the very end. Egg left in the pan for the whole cook is wet gray filler. Scramble it in hot oil for 30 seconds until barely set, slide it onto a plate, cook everything else, and return it at the end. Egg proteins tighten as they overcoagulate and squeeze out the water they held, and that water causes the dampness you blame on the rice. This is how Japanese restaurants keep the egg distinct instead of dissolved. Number 17, fry in lard or rendered pork fat, and the flavor stays in your mouth. Refined neutral oil does one job, conducting heat, and contributes nothing to taste. Use 2 tablespoons of lard or fat you rendered from pork belly in place of your usual oil. Most flavor compounds in aromatics and meat are fat soluble, and animal fats hold them and coat the palate far longer than refined seed oil. This is how restaurant kitchens get a richness home cooks chase with more soy sauce. Number 16, finish with a knob of butter in the last 30 seconds and get a depth nobody expects. Butter added early simply burns, which is why most people write it off. Drop 1 tablespoon of unsalted butter in at the end, heat off, and toss until it disappears. Butter carries milk solids, and those proteins and sugars brown through the Maillard reaction into nutty compounds, but they scorch within a minute at frying temperature. This is how Japanese home cooks build the flavor behind teppanyaki rice. Number 15, mince your aromatics fine and bloom them in the oil before anything else joins them. Garlic thrown in with everything else is garlic you can see but cannot taste. Mince the garlic and scallion whites, then give them 30 seconds in the hot fat before the rice goes in. Their aroma compounds are fat-soluble, so blooming pulls them into the oil, which carries them across every grain. This is how Japanese home cooks get that smell into the whole dish. And it is what my grandma Yuki used to do. She would press each piece of ginger flat with her thumb and never once told me why. Number 14, chop your garlic and then leave it alone for 10 minutes. Garlic that goes from board to hot oil in 15 seconds gives a fraction of its flavor. Mince it first, then prep everything else before you touch it again. Cutting ruptures the cells and lets the enzyme alliinase convert alliin into allicin, which is where garlic flavor comes from. And that conversion needs several minutes before heat destroys the enzyme. This is how professional kitchens get garlic that tastes like garlic instead of a suggestion. Number 13, press the rice flat and leave it completely alone for 90 seconds. Constant stirring feels like cooking, and it is why your rice never browns. Spread it into an even layer with the back of your spatula, then do nothing for a minute and a half. Surface water must fully evaporate before the surface can climb past 300 degrees, where Maillard browning begins, and every stir brings wet grains up to reset the clock. This is how Japanese restaurants get that toasted quality home versions never have. Number 12, put the peas in frozen in the last 30 seconds. Thawed peas look more considerate and will water down your pan in 10 seconds. Take them straight from the freezer bag and add them at the very end. No rinsing and no defrosting. Freezing forms ice crystals that rupture cell walls, so a thawed pea has lost structural integrity and dumps its water on contact while a frozen one heats through first. This is how restaurant kitchens use frozen vegetables and get away with it. That is moisture handled. Now seasoning, and everything from here is where the dish stops tasting homemade, down to number 1, which decides whether any of the others matter. Number 11, pour the soy sauce around the hot rim of the pan and never onto the rice. Soy sauce poured on top soaks into the grains, which is how you get wet brown rice that tastes flat. Drizzle 1.5 tablespoons in a circle down the inside wall where the metal is hottest. The water flashes off instantly, and the concentrated amino acids and sugars left behind brown into new aromatic compounds before they reach the food. This is how Japanese restaurants get that seared soy fragrance you smell from the door. Number 10, deglaze with a tablespoon of sake and pull the stuck flavor back into the dish. Everything browning onto the bottom of your pan is flavor, and scraping dry just tears up your seasoning. Splash 1 tablespoon of sake into the hot pan where the fond has formed and scrape immediately. Ethanol dissolves aromatic molecules that water cannot touch, and it boils below water, so it evaporates fast and lifts those compounds into the food. This is how Japanese kitchens recover everything the pan built. Number 9, add a teaspoon of mirin or a pinch of sugar alongside the soy sauce. Home-fried rice is often salty without being deep, and more soy sauce makes that worse. Add 1 teaspoon of mirin at the moment the soy sauce goes down the side of the pan. Sugars caramelize at high heat into hundreds of new compounds with nutty and slightly bitter notes, and they give the browning more raw material than the rice provides alone. This is how Japanese restaurants get complexity out of 3 ingredients. Number 8, add white pepper off the heat at the very end. White pepper added at the start is white pepper you paid for and evaporated into your kitchen. Turn off the burner, add a quarter teaspoon of ground white pepper, and toss twice. Its aroma comes from volatile terpene compounds with low boiling points, so they leave as vapor within seconds at frying temperature and are gone by the time you serve. This is how Japanese kitchens get that warm background note home versions miss. Number 7, use MSG or a teaspoon of dashi powder and stop trying to fake it with salt. If you have been avoiding MSG because of something you read, you are voluntarily making your food less delicious. Stir half a teaspoon through the rice in the last minute. Glutamate and inosinate multiply each other rather than adding, so glutamate alongside the inosinate in dried bonito produces a savory intensity, several times what either delivers alone. This is how restaurants get that depth you can never place, and it is what my grandma Yuki used to do, a red-capped shaker, lived beside her stove my whole childhood, and the science is on her side. We are into the last 6, the ones that separate a decent home plate from something that tastes like a restaurant. Number 6, velvet your meat with baking soda and it will never be tough again. Small pieces of chicken or pork over this heat go from raw to dry and stringy with no window in between. Toss half a pound of thinly sliced meat with a quarter teaspoon of baking soda. Let it sit 15 minutes, then rinse and pat dry. Baking soda raises the pH at the surface, and at higher pH the muscle proteins bond much less as they cook, so they hold their moisture. This is how restaurants get that velvety texture in 4 minutes. Number 5, dry every add-in on paper towels before it touches the pan. Wet shrimp, mushrooms, and rinsed meat straight from the colander. Drop your pan temperature harder than anything else. Lay everything on paper towels and press the tops dry. Evaporating water absorbs roughly 6 times the energy needed to heat that same water from cold to boiling, so surface water is a heat sink that turns frying into steaming. This is how professional kitchens keep a pan working through ingredient after ingredient. Number 4, the Woki HEI pass, and nobody tells you it is achievable at home. Everyone assumes smoky restaurant character needs a jet engine burner and a wok you do not own, so nobody tries. In the last 30 seconds, turn the heat as high as it goes, flick half a teaspoon of oil across the pan, and toss the rice up through the air. At those temperatures, the oil vaporizes and pyrolyzes into aldehydes and furan compounds, which condense back onto the food as it falls. This is how restaurants get a smoky note no ingredient can imitate. Number 3, add the scallion greens and the sesame oil with the heat turned off. Using sesame oil as a cooking oil is the most expensive mistake in Asian home cooking. Kill the burner, add 1 teaspoon of toasted sesame oil and your sliced scallion greens, stir twice, and stop. Both rely on volatile sulfur and aroma compounds that break down within seconds on a hot surface, which is why they smell incredible in the bottle and like nothing on the plate. This is how Japanese home cooks get that fragrance to the table. Number 2, serve it immediately into a warmed bowl. The best fried rice you have made starts declining the moment it stops moving. Run your serving bowls under hot tap water and dry them while the rice finishes. Retrogradation restarts as soon as the rice cools, firming the grains toward hardness, and a cold bowl condenses escaping steam back onto the bottom layer, which is why the last third is always soggiest. This is how Japanese restaurants control something home cooks never notice. And here we are at number 1, the trick that genuinely changes everything, and the one that decides whether the other 30 worked. Number 1, cook 1 portion at a time and never put more than 2 cups of cooked rice in the pan. This is the real reason your fried rice fails, and it fails the moment you double the recipe. Cook a single serving, plate it, wipe the pan, and go again, even if that means 4 passes. Your pan holds a fixed amount of stored heat, and past 2 cups, the rice absorbs more energy than the burner can replace. So the surface falls below the point where water leaves faster than it arrives, and you are steaming. This is how every Japanese restaurant on Earth cooks fried rice, one order at a time. There you have it, 31 tricks. Start with 3 or 4 this week. Chill your rice uncovered, coat the grains in egg, pour the soy sauce down the side of the pan, and cook one portion at a time. Your fried rice will improve dramatically and immediately. A few of these came from my grandma Yuki, who never explained a single one of them, and who would be quietly pleased they are in your kitchen now. Drop a comment below and tell me which one surprised you the most. And subscribe if you want more deep dive cooking content like this. I have so much more coming.